Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Happy Recap podcast for this week, the 19th of October, and glad to have you along with us as we head into the week, ostensibly, EJ, what seems like the final week of the Major League Baseball season, as, quite amazingly, Tuesday will begin the World Series. It feels like the season just began, and certainly, our team is long out of it. But with one game yet to play, as we're as we're recording right now, there's one game yet to play in the LCS between the Dodgers and the Braves. It's certainly amazing to think that, World Series baseball and the end of the season, where we all go scrambling back to the Korean Baseball League, is coming very quickly.
Yeah, I don't think any of us actually thought for sure that we were going to get to this point at all based on the early corona outbreaks amongst teams like the Marlins. And we all kind of felt like MLB was going to be shut down at some point, but instead they maintained the course, and here we are. And I can't believe you're right. Tuesday, let's go with some World Series. And I'm really, really bummed that there is not going to be baseball in about 2 weeks because I've been enjoying these playoffs and I've been enjoying having this break from reality. And it's kind of a bummer that the first sport back is also going to be the first one that's gone again.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I've always said, as we've done this show over the years, as far as the Mets go, obviously these are the suits I root for. I root for the suits more so than the players. But when it comes to when the Mets are out of it, I root for great stories, great games, and, occasionally I will have a preference, a preferential outcome. And so I'll root for that preferential outcome. And I have to say, even speaking with one game yet to decide it, I think my preferential outcome is a World Series win for the Tampa Bay Rays.
Well, as we signed off last week, I signed off with the Let's Go Rays, so I am firmly in their camp. Kind of wish they didn't have to make it as exciting as they did on their road to the World Series.
Yes.
I was far more enjoying the cruise control 3-0 lead that they had, and then of course the Astros, basically the new evil empire, had to go ahead and make it a little bit interesting. But fortunately, the Rays were able to go ahead and overcome, thereby leaving the Yankees as the only team to ever lose after being up 3-0.
Yeah, you certainly didn't want to see that record fall this year amongst all the other 2020 nonsense that we've dealt with. But, I think that, when you look at the Rays, it's kind of funny. Before the year before this past 12 months and what we've learned about the Astros, and how their organization was run thud. I would have said that if I was going to model a team I was building after one of two franchises, it would have been the Astros or the Rays, because they're both built differently, mind you. But I mean, I've always admired the Rays because they have built from within with nothing. They've never had anything. And barely a year goes by that they're out of contention. Maybe every 4 or 5 years, they'll have a year where they're kind of out of it and they wind up in third place. But they're right back in it that next year. And it's not because they went out and got the next big name. It really is because they have been that well built. Those prospects that are coming up through the system, they pick the right moderately priced free agents. They make the right trades. They trade their stars at the right time and get the right return for them. To me, if you're a small market team, that is the only template on which to build. You should all be trying to be the Tampa Bay Rays. Your larger market teams, minus the cheating, should all be trying to be like the Astros. The reality of it is before the cheating came in, I mean, this was a team that blew itself up a couple of years ago to the point where their cable ratings for their games on their network were a 0.0. They had 3 number 1 draft picks in a row. And I watched 2 of them play in a game together in the minor leagues. Some Correa kid and Mark Appel, who became the 3rd number 1 pick in Major League history to not make the majors. But that was the thing. This is a team that, mind you, with the Astros, had 3 number 1 picks. Really only Correa panned out of those 3. And they still have been as dominant as they've been these past 4 years. Again, cheating involved, sure, but it's kind of like the whole steroid thing. The steroid doesn't help you, doesn't help it hit the bat. It helps your bat speed. So it's kind of one of those things. You have to be a certain level to be helped by what they did. All that to say is I'm not defending the Houston Astros. They deserved the exit from the ALCS. I want the Rays to take it. I want them to show them that a small market team can do it. I want them to prove all those that have made fun of them over the years, wrong. I think it is a great story for baseball, especially at a point where economic stress within the sport. This is a model that could keep compelling baseball on our screens throughout however long this financial crisis we're in goes. This says all good things about America.
Well, it's interesting because I think wrongly, a lot of the national media has tried to paint the Astros even forcing a game 7 almost as like a redemption song for them. And I do not feel it's that. This was not their redemption from the fact that they cheated to win a World Series. No. But I would have to be a fool if I didn't tip my cap to what they did. Yeah, they got blown up. They got discovered. They had their manager get suspended. They basically became a laughing stock in many ways. They became the target of every other team in baseball and still managed to make it all the way to a game 7 of a championship series. You'd be a fool if you were a baseball fan who didn't tip your cap to that. Of course I tip my cap to that. But in no way, shape, or form do I feel that they are redeemed for what they've done in the past. Credit where credit's due. They did it missing 2 of their best pitchers. Credit where credit's due. They did it while being a mockery in baseball, and I'll definitely tip my cap to them, but in no way or shape or form am I redeeming them from what they've done in the past.
And the reality of it is you're dealing with a team that, as crowds presumably return at least in limited numbers in 2021, if not hopefully by the end of the season in full numbers, they still deserve those boos you're planning for them, folks. They still deserve to hear from it that the fans don't approve. Just because they didn't have to hear a single boo this season doesn't mean that is not something that they aren't deserving of. That said, you look at the history of baseball, and we've talked about some of the good guys, some of the guys that are really easy to root for, some of the guys that are, baseball, just the Yogi Berras of the world. Nobody can dislike them. One of those guys, arguably, is Dusty Baker.
Right.
There are few people in the modern game more beloved than Dusty Baker. Our good friend Casey Cern from SiriusXM, he'll come on, he'll say a negative word about just about everybody, and they'll deserve it, mind you. He doesn't throw trash at anybody. But the one guy that I've never heard him say a crossword towards or even question a decision is his boy Dusty Baker. So when somebody who can be negative at a drop of a hat can be ultra positive about a guy, Dusty Baker's a class act. We've seen it. We've seen it with the organizations, and yet again, left at the altar. I don't know what this guy has to do to push something across, but it seems like I have never seen somebody so beloved, so seemingly star-crossed.
Right. And when the Astros had to go out and get the new manager, he really was that guy. You needed somebody who's universally beloved, somebody who has been successful in the past, and they nailed it with Dusty. The whole hashtag Dusty has a plan became a thing because of their choice to bring him in and try to give them a little bit of credibility again. But yeah, you're right. Talk about star-crossed, talk about left at the altar. It would have been hard to root for Dusty to win here just because I really do hate the organization that much. And it's not just from them cheating. This goes all the way back to 86. This goes back to that heated rivalry, that heated championship series that the Mets had with the Astros. I've never liked that organization, but it would have been hard to root against Dusty in a World Series. And quite frankly, I'm glad that I don't have to make that decision. And I'm really happy that when it comes to the series, we're not going to be dwelling on the Astros cheating ways the entire series like we would have had to touch probably almost every game of the World Series at some point or another.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's kind of the thing. It's funny you mentioned going back to 1986, and obviously the heated rivalry. I remember as an 11-year-old, it was fireworks night, 1986, July 3rd, and we were there for the fireworks, of course, and the fireworks came in form of baseball and after the game, and we had tickets in the loge in the very last seats next to the Astros bullpen. So we were in that overhang area that used to be at Shea into the bullpen. So I had a big old sign that said "Blast the Astros" that was blasting into their bullpen the whole game, and that was kind of how I looked at the team at the time. But if you think about it, you look at the cheating scandal of 2017. Certainly there's been no evidence purported of 2019, but there's no evidence otherwise either. 2017, we know they cheated. The question I have is this: isn't it ironic that we look back to 1986
Yep.
when what was one of the hallmarks of that team, Mike Scott?
Yep.
What was he supposedly doing? Cheating. And they honor the guy, and he's admitted it at this point pretty much.
Right. I mean, if you go back to watch 1986, A Year to Remember, and I don't think there's a Mets fan alive who didn't own multiple copies of that on VHS or Betamax, you can see in the Mike Scott games how much space he was occupying in our best hitters' heads. You can see Keith Hernandez, one of the best hitters in franchise history, absolutely flummoxed on the bench as he's looking at the balls that Scott was throwing, trying to find proof of scuffing the ball or whatever it was that Scott was doing to it. He absolutely owned Rent in the Mets hitters' heads that series, and you're absolutely right. They now celebrate him for doing so.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's one of those things. I had the opportunity to go to a ball game at Minute Maid Park. I want to say it was 2016. And walking around, we were in the club level and walking around where they kind of have their Hall of Fame, so to speak. And you see these giant pictures of Nolan Ryan. And I will say this: if you're ever in Houston, have the Nolan Ryan beef. Oh my goodness, those burgers are good. But that's beside the point. And then you get to Mike Scott, and I just kind of looked at my gosh, what a freaking cheater. And it just, I literally felt myself in 2016, 30 years later, getting viscerally angry to the point I had to walk away and go, I cannot stand to see this player honored because of how he played the game. Oh, it just, it really bothered me 3 decades later.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm even more irrational because during Game 6 of that NLCS, sadly, my teddy bear hamster, Houdini, passed away. He got trapped in his little habitat trail while that game was on. And my irrational 8-year-old brain has continued to blame the Astros solely for that. Hashtag rest in peace, Houdini.
I was actually, still to this day, the only playoff game I've ever been to was Game 5 of that series. And it was a game so good, I went twice because the original game was rained out.
Right.
And I spoke to my dad last week on the show, and he and I went. It was Columbus Day, so I had the day off from school, and he went with me because he also had the day off from work. And because of the beloved television schedule at the time of the game was on ABC, they felt delaying the game any longer would interfere with Monday Night Football.
Right.
So they called the game. So next day, my mom could get off, but my dad couldn't. So my mom and I went to the game. With all the troubles with the trains and the fact that it was raining that day, we didn't get there till about the second inning. And the best part of it was, though, that one of the ushers, when we got up to our seats, was a coworker of my mom at her day job.
Oh, wow.
And his day job. They both worked at the local high school. And so he put us down in the upper deck boxes in the front row. And he goes, if these people show up, I'll find you another. And by the 7th inning, we were in Loge.
As the good old days of Shea. You're not having that.
Good old days of Shea. And we were doing it completely with the usher's assistance. It wasn't a matter of, no tips, no nothing. This is on the house. But so I'll never forget that game. And I always talk about, that is the best pitched game I've ever seen. Gooden, Ryan goes, I think, 8. Gooden goes 10.
Yep.
And then Gary Carter wins it with a base hit in the in extras. It was, that was some great game, and that was the thing that came out of that 86 is that at the end of the day, is that they cheated. It was a harsh rivalry, but we got some good baseball out of it.
Oh yeah, that series you can't turn it off. Whenever SNY is running a Mets Classic from that series, there's no turning that series off.
No, if you come in and there's a lot of classic baseball that I was able to watch during the early part of the abandoned season, and there was one day I didn't have anything going on. I sat down. What's on MLB? It was the second inning of Game 6 of the NLCS, and I was like, "This is a 4-hour commitment." Okay, I'm here.
Yep. Yeah.
It was an easy choice. I knew even with that I would be sitting there for a couple hours, and it was what I was going to be watching for the day. But I was more than happy to do it because it's just good, and a great baseball game. I don't know, tell me if I'm wrong about this. A great timeless baseball game is one where you know the outcome. You know exactly what's going to happen on every
Yep.
given play, yet you still feel that play. Every
100%.
every time I watch Game 6 of the World Series,
Yep.
in the back of my mind, will he catch it this time?
Right.
It's the stupidest thing, but I
Yep.
still feel that way. You still emotionally invested in a game 30-something years ago that you know the outcome of. That's great baseball.
Absolutely. And on the opposite end, Red Sox fans, they still can watch Game 6 all the time and say, will he catch it this time? And the result is the same every single time, but we'll still tune in every single time.
It reminds me of the very forgettable movie Fever Pitch with Jimmy Fallon and Drew Barrymore a couple of years ago, where he plays an obsessed Red Sox fan. And when Drew Barrymore breaks up with him, his friends find him alone in a room watching a loop of Buckner over and over and over again. And they're like, I thought you took this tape away from him. He must have had another.
Right.
And, as bad of a movie as it was, I have a feeling that is an ounce of reality for many Red Sox fans. There is that secret depression tape of Buckner hidden somewhere.
Right. I'm just glad that I don't have Cardinals programming on my television, because I'm sure they show Wainwright and Beltran nonstop. And that is something that I know I would get sucked into watching. And I know that is something that would rip my heart out every single time again.
There are two things I can't rewatch. It's that Beltran play, and don't get me wrong, I'm not one of those people that said he should have swing. That's one of the nastiest curveballs I've seen in all my years of watching baseball. I get being frozen up by it. So I mean, I tip my hat to Carlos. I don't fault him for that. It's just terrible to watch. It's just terrible that it happened. And I can hate that it happened without hating Carlos Beltran. But the other is the final at bat in '99 with Kenny Rogers.
Right. The ball four.
Yeah. Those are the two things in Mets history. Almost anything else, even to our detriment, I could rewatch. Those two things I have to turn away.
I actually tortured myself the other night with Timo not running it out in Game 1 of the World Series against the Yanks. Yeah, I tortured myself on that one the other night, and that was a pretty low point for me in this pandemic.
So I wanted to, before we wrap up with this part of the program, and a little later on, we'll have Justin Toscano, our good friend, joining us to talk all things Mets. But wanted to touch a little bit on the ownership situation. I'm not remiss that there are a couple of days off. There's one tomorrow. Monday the 19th is off. I believe Thursday is an off day, and then there's an off day between Game 5 and 6. Almost a traditional schedule that way for the World Series, where we've had precious few off days thus far. I say this to say that gives baseball opportunities to, say, cast votes and announce results of said votes, or to hold those results until shortly after the World Series. But I would say, I think my guess, and I think we'll definitely ask Justin his view on this, we're easily within, I think, as of tomorrow, a 2-week window of transfer of ownership of the New York Mets.
Yep, totally agree. I think that we're going to let the World Series play out. They're not going to want to have anything taking away the headlines of the World Series. But I think once the World Series is out of the way, once the parade has been held, if there's any type of parade in a virtual social distancing world that we live in, but once any celebrations are out of the way, I do anticipate probably within a day or two of hearing news of the transfer of ownership.
Yeah, I absolutely think so too. And, I think that when we look at this off season, it's certainly hard to imagine what it's going to be like, because obviously we were dealing with more unknowns in the Mets off season than we've had since 1980. And, there are a few things we didn't have in 1980. Cable, half the newspapers, the internet, SNY, cable networks. I mean, there WFAN didn't exist in 1980. So, this really is a whole new world, so to speak, for Mets fans, not knowing what we're into, not knowing what we're up for, but it'll be interesting to see what the next couple of weeks brings in with Sandy Alderson, and the reality that we have a potentially great owner who not only is showing to have some wisdom with this team, he's being good to the people that count. The fact that he's paying stadium workers who wouldn't have worked for him this year at all. He's covering them till opening day. A multi-million-dollar investment in the ushers and ticket takers and various other workers around Citi Field. It's hard not to feel good about a guy like that.
Absolutely. Class act all around to make that move. And it was funny when that announcement was made, I remember reading on Twitter, and I forget who it was, so I apologize for the lack of citation, but he said, this isn't going to be a transfer of ownership. This is going to be a coronation with this man. And I definitely feel after hearing that news that that's a pretty accurate statement.
Yeah, I think the thing that I'm trying to be a little bit temperate of, I'm ready to coronate the man, but I'm also ready to coronate him with realistic expectations. And, again, I've always preached as a fan, spend, but spend wisely.
Right.
And if the Dodgers get knocked out again tonight, if again they fail to win the World Series one way or the other, they remain the poster child for why you don't spend.
Right.
The Phillies spent, by their own terms, stupid money the past two off seasons, and they have nothing to show for it. The Yankees have spent, in my words, stupid money the past 11 years and haven't had a ring since 2009. So for those Met fans saying spend, it's a great idea and concept, and there's some definite areas that require expense. There are some definite things he needs to spend money on roster-wise. No question about it. But just going out and buying every high-priced talent is not the way to run a team, because as we see, who's sitting there in the World Series for one? The team with no budget.
Right. And
who may be going home.
It was interesting. The other day, SNY actually put out a poll. Which of these three free agents do you want? And it was Real Muto, it was Bauer, and it was Springer. And I'm looking at that as those are the top three. Well, we've already discussed at length on the show how neither of us are really high in the Bauer sweepstakes. Real Muto apparently wants $200 million for a catcher who's going to be in his 30s. So that's a hard pass for me. So really, of those three guys, Springer would be the guy who I want. And he's the one who I think would be a realistic acquisition, not demanding stupid money.
The thing about Springer that is concerning to me is he's 31.
Right.
And he's probably a center fielder for 2 more years.
Yep.
And then you've got to open up a corner for him. We're not going to have a corner for a while. So that becomes a little bit of a problem. Unless you can get somebody like that to go for a 3-year deal, that's a little bit of a problem. The thing is, in those choices, as nose up as I am towards the idea, I've got to stick with Bauer. Because I look at the free agent market specifically, and I see the biggest emptiness being pitching.
Right.
You basically, as we talked about last time on the show, you've got Stroman, Bauer, and down to like Paxton.
Right.
And so, that's the gap, and it's a huge gap of talent. So I kind of feel like, and let's be honest, we need the starting pitching. We have an okay outfield. I think in a good outfield on a championship team. And the fact is, this is a team that could be in this position had they had some pitching this season. This is a team that, the two things that killed this New York Met team in 2020, starting pitching and, runners in scoring position in the first half of the season. Those are the big two things. And the runners in scoring position seemed to fix itself over time. The starting pitching only continued to get worse.
Right. Yeah. Starting pitching is not an area to go dumpster diving in. We've seen that
No.
way too many times in the past.
Less
I agree
Waka,
with you.
more Bauer. That's kind of how I look at it.
Right, right. So obviously, I definitely want Stroman back, but if that's not a reality, I do think you have to enter serious negotiations with Bauer. Again, I'm not high on him. I think him and Syndergaard in the same locker room is a nightmare waiting to happen. They both have very diva attitudes about themselves. The thing about Springer is I'm not sure I'm ready to move off Brandon Nimmo as my everyday center fielder. I don't know that Nimmo has proven anything that he isn't an everyday player. So if you're bringing Springer in, you're basically saying, okay, Nimmo's now my fourth outfielder, and I'm not sure I'm ready to relegate him to that position yet.
I am not the guy. I mean, that's the thing too. I mean, it's one of those things. There's especially when you get into social media, you get into talk radio, all those different things. You have the voice of people that believe that Nimmo is simply a fourth outfielder. I'm not that guy. I don't buy that. I believe that he is an everyday, capable, good major league player. The only question I have is he that on a championship caliber team? And based on the fact we haven't been one during his tenure,
Right.
It's kind of hard to tell. I like the kid. I have liked the kid from day one. And I can tell you right now, of all the players I've met, I have never met anybody quite like Brandon Nimmo. And that's a compliment. I mean, he is one of the nicest guys. I mean, if you want an autograph from him, you're committing to a conversation.
Yeah.
You're committing to a conversation, and you're going to get a ball that's signed to you.
Right.
And not so you don't sell it. It's because he wants it to be from me to you. That's that's Nimmo. He is so easy to root for as a person and as a player. That smile is infectious. And it goes with talent. It's not just he's happy-go-lucky, he's fun. No, he's happy-go-lucky and he's good.
Right.
And good goes a long way in this market. And I think that with somebody like Nimmo, I would like to see him get every chance to succeed. Especially because the question you have to ask is, if you're looking at Nimmo versus Springer, and let's say Springer's $25 million a year,
right,
and Nimmo is $2 million a year at this point or thereabouts, is Springer really bringing $23 million a year more in results, in wins? Is he really doing that? And that's where the question has to be, and that's where I come into that whole concept of spend or spend wisely. Because again, if the rotation is in tatters, why not go out and re-sign Stroman and grab Bauer?
Right.
As opposed to either Real Muto or Springer. Now, Real Muto, he's thrown up a lot of red flags in my book. He's looking for big bucks in a bad year. But I think that whereas Stroman, because of the market right now, he's a guy who could take a qualifying offer. It's possible.
18 million is nothing to sneeze at.
No, and especially in a year where he could reestablish himself and show what he's got on the mound, as opposed to having sat out the season. It would definitely be more potentially payoff for him long term. But then you have Stroman and Bauer, who claims he's only going to sign 1-year contracts from here on out, on 1-year deals. So I mean, you're just punting your problem to next year. But it's still a problem that's good to have. But my biggest thing I keep coming back is that starting pitching.
Right. And I think if you're the Mets, you're foolish if you don't make that qualifying offer, unless that Stroman indicates he is willing to sign a multi-year deal. At the very least, make the offer, and if he walks away, at least you get the draft pick out of it. So I think that is a pretty solid strategy to consider if you are the Mets moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we've got a lot to look forward to with this team. We've got a lot to look back to. And we're going to be discussing that a lot over the next couple of shows. And we've got our good friend Justin Toscano, who will join us on the very next edition of the Happy Recap Radio Show. We'll be releasing that during the week here. We'll drop that sometime during the World Series, so be on the lookout for that. And we're tentatively having an old friend join us next week, EJ. Matthew Cerrone, the founder of the much beloved I think it's fair to call it late website Mets blog. It certainly doesn't exist in any way, shape, or form that when he operated it. But it'll be good to catch up with our old friend and see how he's doing and see what he is up to. But that's next week, and I tell you, I'm looking forward to it.
Same here. Matt's always been really supportive of us. He's always encouraged us to move forward with what our projects were, and we're looking forward to catching up a little bit and seeing what he's getting into.
Absolutely. So appreciate everybody watching. Make sure you watch the rest of the playoff baseball. As we record this right now, there's one game left in the LCS, but I think it's safe to say, EJ, we're on the same page with let's go Rays.
Let's go Rays, baby.